Hi there, this is a video for Algebra 1 students taking their final exam soon. We're going to be going over solving for variable basics today, and we're going to use the June 2018 exam to help you guys familiarize yourself with the questions that New York State Regents likes to ask during their exam. Alright, so if you want to solve for a variable, you have to cancel out the other numbers and get the variable by itself on one side of the equation. We'll try a couple examples here. Alright, so when a variable is being added by another number, to cancel it out, you have to subtract it. So x plus 4 is canceled out with minus 4, and those 4's cancel out, and you have x is equal to 1. Subtraction is plus 4, and now you have x is equal to 9. Multiplication, you divide, and now you have x is equal to 5 out of 4. And for division, you multiply. And now you have x is equal to 20. Alright, and then for exponents and roots, what do you want to do if, like, let's say you have x squared is equal to 4. To cancel out this squared sign, you take the square root of the x and the square root of the other side, and then you get x is equal to positive or negative 2. Remember, when you square root something, there's both a positive answer and a negative answer. And this could also go for higher exponents, such as x to the third is equal to 8. But instead of taking the square root, you're taking the cube root of this of each side. So you have the cube root of x to the third and the cube root of 8. The cube root of x to the third is x, and the cube root of 8 is just 2. When you take the cube root of something, you don't have two answers, you just have one answer. And then this can also go for the opposite. So the square root of x is equal to 4. And this time you put the exponent of 2 here, because it's the square root, and then exponent of 2 here. And now you have x is equal to 16. Then for the cube root of x is equal to 2. You put exponent of 3 here, and an exponent of 3 here, and now you have x is equal to 8. Alright, so those should have been pretty simple, but let's look at how New York State Regents likes to ask their questions to make it a bit more complicated. So this was question 29 from the June 2018 exam. It says, when an apple is dropped from a tower 256 feet high, the function h of t is equal to negative 16t squared plus 256 models the height of the apple in feet after t seconds. Determine algebraically the number of seconds it takes the apple to hit the ground. Alright, so what it's asking us to do here is to find the number of seconds, and the number of seconds is represented by t. So what we're solving for is the variable t here, and they already gave us the entire equation. The only thing we need to determine really is what h of t is, and it's pretty obvious when the apple hits the ground, then the height would be equal to 0. So 0 is equal to negative 16 t squared plus 256. Alright, and then we just solve for this variable with the tactics that we used in the last couple slides. So subtract first. Now you have 256 is equal to negative 16 t squared, and now we divide. And that gives us 16 is equal to t, squared, and now we take the square root of this, and we have positive or negative 4 is equal to t. So now we need to determine if it's a positive or a negative 4. That is the answer, because there's really only one answer to this. It wouldn't make sense if it's negative 4 seconds, because the experiment didn't start before 0 seconds. So the answer has to be 4 seconds. Alright. So that was really just a basic question that the Regents exam likes to ask, but they complicate it a bit more by adding these words in to make you think more about how equations are modeled in real life. All right, let's talk about the distributive property really quick before we move on. It's an important property for you guys to remember, because when a number is being multiplied by two things added together, you can just multiply it by each separate number or variable, like this. You multiply the 7 by the x, and you get 7x, and then the 7 multiplied by the 3, and you get 21. And then in this case, you have the x being multiplied by the y, and you have xy, and the x being multiplied by the -5, and you have negative 5x. Alright, and then let's look at a couple more problems that the June 2018 exam asked. This was question 3. It says the expression 3x squared plus 2x minus 3 minus 4x multiplied by 4x squared minus 7x plus 5 is equivalent to, and we have to pretty much simplify this equation. So we talked about the distributive property last time. So what we're going to do is we're just going to write this whole thing out again because I don't have room. Alright, so in the distributive property, we can just distribute the numbers when things are only being added inside the parentheses. So let's start off with 3. We distribute that here, here, and here. So 3 multiplied by x squared is 3x squared. 3 multiplied by 2x is 6x. And 3 multiplied by -3 is -9. And now we have to distribute for the -4 going into 4x squared minus 7x minus 5. So there, there, and there. And remember, when things are being subtracted, like right here, you want to include multiplying it by a -4 rather than a +4, and then leaving you want to multiply each one by a -4 instead of a +4. That way, everything all the signs end up proper at the end of your process. So we have negative 16 x squared, and then -4 multiplied by -7x is positive 28x. That's sloppy. 28x. And then that's -4 multiplied by -5 is positive 20. And now we just need to combine like terms, and we have our answer. So 3x squared minus 16x squared is -13x squared. 6x plus 28x is equal to 34x. And then -9 plus 20 is equal to 11. And then we can see our answer right here on 2. and that's the answer to the question. Yeah, hold on. Let me just erase some of the work here, and then we can circle our answer right here. All right, on to the next question. Students were asked to write a formula for the length of a rectangle by using the formula for its perimeter. P equals 2L plus 2W. 3 of their responses are shown below. Here's the 3 responses, and we have to know which responses are correct. Alright, so how we would first start off this problem is to notice that we set everything is set to L, and so we're solving for the variable L because that represents the length. So let's just start off with that process. And then we can see which ones are equivalent to our answer that we got at from this. So how we would normally do this is we would subtract 2W from each side, and now we have P minus 2W is equal to 2L. Let's make it a capital L, that way we don't confuse it with a 1. And now to get the L by itself, we divide by 2, and now we have P minus 2W over 2 is equal to L. Okay, so we can already tell that P minus 2W over 2 is the same thing as number 3, so we know that one's correct. And now we have to evaluate for the other ones. So for 1, first of all, we need to see if that's equivalent. So what it's pretty much saying is that half of P minus W is also equal to L. And we can notice that it actually is because each of the, if you divide P by 2 and then you divide negative 2W by 2, you have the result half P minus W is equal to L. Because remember, you could just separate these two things out and you could make it look like, so it's P over 2 minus 2W over 2 is equal to L, and those two things are equivalent. And then it's pretty obvious from here that that could also be written as half P minus W, just simplifying those two, is equal to L. So we know this one's correct. And then let's fix our L. Now this one. How we would notice if this is correct is we look at our equation, and then we could probably realize that if we put these things in parentheses, dividing by a number is also the same as multiplying by a fraction. So you'd realize that this is the same thing as multiplying by half. So yeah, this would be equivalent because you just have half by P minus 2W is equal to L. Yeah. And so we could know that all 3 responses are correct, and we can circle that one. Alright. Alright, now let's move on to this problem. Alright, it says solve the equation below algebraically for the exact value of x. My bad, just ignore that. That says x right there. And notice how it's saying exact value. That means you probably won't want decimal because the answer we're going to get is probably going to be a repeating decimal if it is expressed as a decimal. And we can't write down all those decimals onto the answer booklet. So we're probably looking for a fraction in this one. Let's begin this by multiplying using the distributive property. And then we distribute negative 2/3 onto x and negative 2/3 onto 5. And so what we'd have is 6 minus 2 over 3 x plus minus 10 over 3 is equal to 4x. And now let's just add 2 over 3x each side, just to get the x's on their own side and the numbers on their own side. And now what we have is 6 minus 10 over 3 is equal to 4x plus 2 over 3x. Alright, so how we're going to make these whole numbers a fraction is we're going to multiply them by 3 over 3, because 3 over 3 is equivalent to 1. So you're not really changing the value of 6 by multiplying by the fraction 3 over 3. But you're allowing it to have a denominator of 3, so these two can be combined. And then we're going to do the same thing for 4x and multiply it by 3 over 3. And we're going to move our work all the way over here. So 6 multiplied by 3 over 3 is 18 over 3, minus that 10 over 3 is equal to 4x multiplied by 3 over 3 is 12 over 3x plus that 2 over 3x. And now we can just combine these, and we have 8 over 3 is equal to 14 over 3x. And how I'd start solving from here is I'd multiply each side by 3, so they can cancel the denominator on both sides. And now we have 8 is equal to 14x, and we just divide each side by 14. And we have our answer of 8 out of 14 is equal to x. And you can simplify that to 4 out of 7 is equal to x if you'd like. Oh, solving for inequalities. When you solve for inequalities, it's just the same thing as solving for equations, but you just need to remember that when you're multiplying or dividing by a negative number, you need to flip the inequality sign. And now let's look at this one. This was the first question on the June 2018 exam. Alright, so the solution to 4p plus 2 is less than 2 multiplied by p plus 5. Okay, so what they're having us do is solving for p. And so I'm just going to rewrite this down here for p plus 2. And let's just begin by using the distributive property here. And now we have 4p plus 2 is less than or equal to 2p plus 10. And now we could try to get p by itself. Let's go with subtracting 2p from each side. And now we have 2p plus 2 is less than 10, because these two cancel out. And let's get rid of this 2. And now we have 2p is less than 8. And finally, we're going to divide each side by 2. And the result would be p is less than 4, which is right here. Alright, that concludes this video. Hope you got something out of it. Thanks.